Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Frank Chikane, the members of the South African Anti-Apartheid Movement Steering Committee, the representatives of the Palestinians activists in our midst, including the speaker who just joined us now on the virtual platform, Nadia, fellow anti-apartheid activists, and ladies and gentlemen, everyone who is here this evening to join the launch of the South African Anti-Apartheid Movement. I am honored to be here, Reverend, as a servant of the people of South Africa, because this launch fortify our resolve as the government of the Republic of South Africa and our stand. As you have said, when we went to the ICJ, we were vilified, ostracized, and criticized as a South African government that one, we are just on a frivolic of our own, we are the legal arm of Hamas. All manner of conspiracies were raised. But the most insulting one was that we don't have the support of the South African public. And during that period, we saw South Africans from all walks of life standing up in support of the South African government's work and effort, from across religious groups, across ethnic groups, across provinces in our country. Even the Jewish for a free Palestine in our country. But we were also criticized that we are anti-Semitic. And we raised it in various platforms that our case was for the cause of human rights. It can't be anti-Semitism to raise issues of violation of human rights against the Zionist states of Israel. So as a government, we are encouraged by this movement that it's coming together, because we believe it will continue to mobilize, fortify the people of South Africa and even the people across the globe in solidarity of the Palestinian people. I'm saying this because I also had the privilege immediately after assuming office to address what I believe was the biggest celebration of South Africa's democracy outside South Africa. And that was in London at the Westminster Abbey. That celebration was organized by the Anti-Apartheid movement in London. It was huge, Reverend. I've never seen anything bigger than that outside the country, in celebration of the 30 years of democracy. And that was also a sign and a signal of the importance of solidarity work. That the anti-apartheid movement across the globe stood with us to fight against apartheid, but they also stood with us to lay a foundation for our democracy. And they celebrated with us the 30 years of our democracy. I also had the privilege to share a platform with the CEO of Oxfam on the margins of UNGA, General Assembly. And the CEO of Oxfam said something very profound. He is a person of Indian descent. He said to the platform that when the global anti-apartheid movement took grip He did not even know where is South Africa on the map at the time. But as young Indian communities, they were mobilized to put some R1 or whatever amount they could put into the anti-apartheid pot. Clothes, whatever that they could do. And he said what South Africa has done with the case reminded him of this solidarity that they were called upon as a young Indian population. And he said to the global community, what has happened to our conscience? Where are we in supporting this huge movement that the Palestinian people need? And I see this platform as a platform that is going to work to re-galvanize the people of the world so that they have got a global platform of the anti-apartheid, particularly against the state of Israel. Because we see also in many capitals in the world, even Western democracies, marches, protests, which I believe will now have a very good platform of coordination, of engagement, of sharing ideas, of providing platform for support. And this movement gives us that real platform. It is against this background that I saw it fit and befitting to attend this and give the support of the South African government to this movement. We, as the South African government, we know the background and the struggle against apartheid of South Africa, that it is intertwined with the struggle of the Palestinian people. What paradox of tragic proportions with the ghastly consequences for millions of peoples, human beings across the globe, by some self-proclaimed special ones. In 1948 was the year that South Africa's National Party instituted the apartheid state. Incidentally, it was the same year that Israel's implemented their D plan to rob and dispossess the Palestinians of their land as they tried desperately to respond with their war of independence, or Al-Naba. And while all was playing out, the UN adopted the Universal Charter of Human Rights. What an irony of unthinkable proportions. Apartheid or separateness, South Africa's infamous contribution to the world, was one of the most evil systems of fascism in history. It was a system and a doctrine of institutionalized racism that privileged the minority white population of European descent at the expense of indigenous populations of color and black majority in general in South Africa. The minority white Afrikaner regimes used both oppressive and repressive means. For decades during the era of white minority rule, apartheid was declared a crime against humanity and a threat to international peace and security. The national interest goal of successive governments became that of the self-preservation of white men in South Africa at the deliberate expense of the indigenous black population and other races. James Barber reminded us that the overriding aim of South African government in this period of 1945 to 1989 was the preservation of white-controlled state, although the means employed to maintain white power and identity changed as the challenges increased. Like in South Africa, so is Israel turned Palestinians as second-class citizens in their own land for the privilege and security of the Zionists. The occupied West Bank and the settlement in the Palestine were effectively Bantustans and group areas patrolled by the brutal IDF, as was the case with the South African Defense Force. The start of the anti-apartheid movement is a crucial turning point for the global movement to mobilize and stand together, to build a collective consciousness of the global population, to isolate the state of Israel. It was Albert Luthuli running cry in 1959 for the world to boycott apartheid South Africa that effectively signaled the start of the anti-apartheid movement. Newly independent black started to attack apartheid, calls for boycotts, sanctions, pickets, and like intensified as many states promoted actions against South Africa across the African continent. The establishment of anti-apartheid bodies abroad in the early 1960s coincided with the revolutionary and the liberation of many third world states. A clash between the immorality of apartheid and the morality of democracy was inevitable. The subjugated people of Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean and the Pacific region, who had struggled or were struggling for their own independence, quickly took up the anti-apartheid struggle. This movement you are launching tonight is the same call. Even before Luthuli's call, by 1955, the South African government was already beginning to feel the pressure as it was forced to withdraw from the United Nations Educational, Social, and Cultural Organization, today's UNESCO. Isolation threatened to bite very early in the apartheid's existence. British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan addressed the South African Parliament in Cape Town on the 3rd of February 1960 and said that the winds of change were blowing over Africa. In reality, the winds of change were blowing against the apartheid throughout the world. Verwoed, angry, withdrew from the Commonwealth. This movement is the same call for the people of Palestine. The Sharpeville massacre on the 21st March 1960, in which 69 people were gunned down by apartheid security forces, was a real turning point. And the UN Security Council debated South Africa's apartheid policies and threatened it with punitive measures. International reactions to the dramatic events at Sharpeville bore out the interconnectedness of domestic and foreign policies as many sections of the international community responded sharply to the deteriorating situation and the growing state of repression. The call you are making today is the same. I mean, we are talking now about more than 43,000 Palestinian people that have been massacred. The majority of them, men and women, with no certainty of the future of the Palestinian people, that they will be annihilated as a group, the target being collective punishment. This call should resonate more with the people of the globe, as the collective conscience of humanity cannot bear this ongoing response by the state of Israel. We have continued to state as the South African government that we condemn the actions of Hamas on the 7th of October. It was inhuman, it was barbaric, and it should be condemned. We continue to state that the response of the state of Israel was disproportionate to this offense. It has gone beyond what is justifiable under international law. It is now a program of ethnic cleansing, of collective punishment, of targeting Palestinians as a people. And it is against this background that we launched our genocide case in the International Court of Justice. Because this genocide, unlike any other genocide that happened before, it's happening in full glee of the international community. It is in our fingerprints. You can see it as it happens in real time because of the advent of technology, unlike the other genocides, which some of them were discovered after the fact, or we only read about them in the newspapers, print media. This one, you see it. It's in your fingertips. You see as it happens. And some of it, it is even reported by the people committing it. They tell us, they show us, they tell the world that we are at this stage busy committing genocide. And I always ask myself that if this can't be genocide, I don't believe there can be any other term or action that fits genocide. There's nothing bigger than this. And that's why I sometimes, as I think and look at it, feel that even the term genocide maybe might need more expansion in regard to this, because this is not only a murder and the massacre of people, but is this destruction of civilian infrastructure, is the destruction of everything, animals, agriculture, anything you can think about. So it is to wipe out from the face of the earth of anything that has got a Palestinian resemblance. So this is really at a genocide at a massive scale of unimaginable proportion, happening in the full glee of all of us. Hence, we are really encouraged by this movement that is starting today, because you are going to shine a spotlight, you will coordinate and help the international community. One may be asking, but why is it relevant that you must still mobilize, there must be actions by the global community to do this thing? And as I was preparing the notes, I also realized that, and it's where I started. When we went to the court, before the case was launched, from the clips, particularly Al Jazeera and some of the social media platforms, we were saying, no, this is genocide. We were believing it. And that's why we said, let's take this action. And I must continue to thank the President of the Republic of South Africa, because when we initiated this process, because we were worried that he may refuse, we did not know how he will react. We were not sure whether to meet him, to convince him, or how. But we say, hey, this is too scary. Let's just write him a letter, so that he can, what he decides, it's up to him, because we thought that if we go and talk to him, we might be chased, we may even be reshuffled. This thing. So let's just write a letter. We will hear what the president decides in his sole discretion. So we were surprised when the president said, no, let's take this course on. And I think for that, for me, he's a man of courage and determination. Because it's not like we all, it's not like we all did not know or understand the repercussions of standing for principle and for the truth. And just after the case was launched, the amount of vilification came was unimaginable. But the point I wanted to raise in this regard is that as we were starting with this process, we had seen these videos and so forth from Al Jazeera and other social media platforms. But when we began to really focus, get the evidence, we were really shocked at the scale and amount of genocide that was unfolding, which even some of the media houses were not really capturing it. It was less than 1% of what the scale. And I believe that once we were able to show to the court, it was able to show to the world the level of of the degree of murderous massacre that was happening in proper chronological order. Because the state of Israel thrives on propaganda. That court case opened the eyes of people of the world that indeed there is plausible or there is genocide happening in this. So that's why many people across the globe started to see the matter differently. And that's why I say you should not really undermine this work that you are doing, because it will help to conscientize, to show the different side of the conflict, but also the different side of the people's involvement and solidarity with the people of Palestine. It will also indicate that they are not alone, but it will also be able to respond to the amount of propaganda that is out there and the narrative that any fight against the state of Israel is anti-Semitism. It's a human rights battle that all of us have to stand on. I was saying to Reverend when we were walking in here that he made a very profound statement at Regina Mundi in Soweto in a program of the ANC in solidarity with Palestine. So I thought he would have repeated it, particularly on the religious issues. So I will not want to go there because I'm not, I understand my limitations on issues of spirituality. So I will leave it to the Reverend. But he made a very profound point that even in the war in Palestine, the Zionist state of Israel does not discriminate in its killing. Doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim or you're a Christian or anything. Hence, they have even bombarded Christian churches. I think he mentioned the Roman Catholic Church, if I'm not mistaken, that was bombed, and other churches, to show that this is not a religious war. So this movement becomes very important for the people here in South Africa to conscientize, to mobilize, but also for the people of the world and for the solidarity with the people of Palestine. And I want to congratulate the Anti-Apartheid movement here in South Africa for this bold step that you are taking. And I must just give you a warning that I know you fought a struggle against apartheid. And you were brave and courageous, Reverend Chikane, and all of you that are involved. This may need more braveness and courage, because not only with the dangers of the killing intent of the Zionist state, but the amount of propaganda, vilification on social media platforms, on publications, that I believe the movement will face. And I believe you are equal to the task to be able to clarify the people of the world. And I say congratulations, and let the struggle continues. Thank you very much.